my name is Janik Goryev, and I'm the Senior Health Information Specialist with Brain Tumour Foundation of Canada, and really pleased to be here with you online today. This is our final webinar of the year. This was the 8th webinar that we did this year, so we're really excited about it because we're going to have some personal stories of hope from some brain tumor survivors as well as a couple of caregivers. Our mission is to reach every Canadian affected by a brain tumor through information, support, education, and research. Those are really the 4 pillars of our organization and our mission. And really, it's our goal to provide the most current and up-to-date information on brain tumors, which is why we did this webinar series this year. And as many of you heard, we decided to forego the National Brain Tumor Conference this past year and replaced it with this national webinar series so that everybody across the country can listen to these webinars in the comforts of their own home. And they are all recorded and up on our website. And in the past year, we've had over 800 people register for these webinars. So like I said, we're very pleased that, that we have this program. As of next year in 2020, we're going to increase the number of webinars from 8 to 12. So there will be 1 webinar per month next year. So keep an eye out for those updates. And before we get started, just a few logistics. Everyone other than the presenter and I have been muted, and if you can't hear us or having a hard time hearing us, please make sure the volume is up on your computer. For the sake of time, we do have 5 presenters today. Usually the webinars run for about 45 minutes. This webinar will more than likely run till 3:30, so if by some chance you have to sign off early, don't worry, we are recording it, and it will be up on our website by next week. But if you have any questions for the presenters or comments, feel free just to add it to the chat section. And if there's specific questions for the speakers, what we'll do is we'll follow up with you via email just because of timing and the number of presenters that we have today. Before we get started, I just want to get an idea as to who is online with us today. So if you could take a moment, please, just to answer this, and please select all that apply to you. Are you a patient or survivor, a caregiver, a family member or friend, a healthcare professional, or a Brain Tumour Foundation of Canada volunteer? And you can go ahead and click those, and it doesn't seem to be working because nobody is clicking anything. This happened to us before. I don't know why. So let's go to the next question, and I'll come back to that after. All right, let's see if this poll works. How did you hear about the Brain Tumour Webinar Series? Isn't technology wonderful when it works? Okay, we're going to skip the polls and go right straight to our presenter. So we will go ahead and get started in a second. There we go. So Melissa, are you there?
I'm here.
Awesome. So just to let everybody know, we do have 5 presenters today. We have 2 of them that are in the office with us here in London, Ontario. And Melissa is joining us from the Toronto area. And Melissa was diagnosed with a hemangioblastomma in 2011 and is the author of the book Day by Day and the creator of Day by Day Hats for Hope, and is also a public speaker. And we're really excited to have you here with us, Melissa. So it's all yours, my friend.
Woo-hoo! Thank you so much. I'd just like to say, first off, thank you so much, Janik, and the team at the Brain Tumour Foundation of Canada. I absolutely love this kind of thing, just to help other people around when it comes to the brain tumor survivors and thrivers too, mind you. So I'd like to start off by sharing the title, and that is, I won the lottery. I will share with you exactly what Janik said. So my diagnosis, my treatment, confused punishment of what that means, coping, and some tips to leave that with you. So, and of course it's not working.
Just click your mouse for a second, Melissa, and then should advance for you. There you go.
Okay, so starting off, so I was told, Melissa, you won the lottery of brain tumors by my doctor, Dr. Mueller. And what he meant by that is that I had a very rare type of brain tumor. I had a hemangioblastomma. So what that means, it's very rare. So there are over 100 different types of brain tumors, and I ended up having the rarest kind, 2% of all brain tumors. It's located at the back of the head of the skull, and it controls your balance. Now, another thing to do with why I won the lottery is because of also the rarity of that, but also the fact that the brain tumor that I had at the back of my head, it actually, theory is that it broke off, traveled all the way down my spine to my tailbone and slowly started to grow. So I had chronic pain for a few horrible years. And to explain the pain, it was as if a cigarette was being put out on my tailbone. Yeah. Oh, and that's 7 people in the whole world that has happened to. So rare indeed. The effects of surgery. So with the brain tumor being removed back in 2011, what happened was, because it was at the back of my head with my balance, it also affected my walking. So I actually had to learn how to walk again. The right side of my body became uncoordinated, so I was unable to walk once again because of my right leg until I learned how to walk again. It was like 6 months later, something like that. Another thing too is my right hand, I was unable to use that to write, put on makeup, play my guitar, all that kind of thing. Luckily, I was able to give the middle finger. Sorry. So yeah, so I had to stick with being left-handed. The thing is, the other thing due to with the effects of surgery is on my left side, during surgery, I actually had a stroke. And that affected the nerve damage on the left side of my body. So I'm a little bit more numb on my left side. It's not nothing you can see visual. So when it comes to colder, damp days, or as all of you know, anybody who has Alzheimer's, and of course, the brain surgery and all that can do it as well, is you get that pain, and that's what it's from. Treatment, there was so much that I just decided to write it down there at the bottom. So that is 2011 I had the surgery, 2013 I had the tailbone, 2013 again I also had to have the tailbone surgery. And the reason why they tried to do the radiation first is because doing surgery, I was at risk of having permanent bladder, bowel, and mobility issues, because that's where all the nerves are. So awesomely enough, knock on wood, everything is good for that. And then because the brain tumor contaminated the back of my tailbone, like what do you call it, the cord that going all the way down, what happened was that contaminated my spinal cord. That's the word, spinal cord. So I had more tumors that actually came up. So what we ended up doing was the full head and spine radiation. When it comes to the prognosis, we don't know, and I don't want to talk about it. So you just gotta live day by day. Confused punishment. This is something you may not have heard about. I kind of came up with it because I had a hard time explaining that I was thinking to myself, why am I being punished? Is it because of having this brain tumor? And that's pretty much what it was. I saw on Facebook, there was this meme, and it was, I got so drunk last night that when I walked across the dance floor, I won the dance contest. And I laugh every time I see it. So this reminds me of confused punishment, the opposite side, where the intentions, that was not the intention. So for example, physical, the very first one there, when I remember it was about 6 months after the surgery, and I'm walking and I'm swaying back and forth. I walk around the block and I'm sweating, and I'm breathing intensely and this kind of thing. This woman who was walking behind me, she decided to pass me, and as she passed me, she turned around and she gave me a dirty look. Why? Because she thought that I was drinking. So here I am, make sure that my mouth is closed so I don't bite my tongue if I were to fall, and this kind of thing. And that's the confused punishment that I get. It's a dirty look for learning to walk again. So then another example for confused punishment when it comes to intellectual, I think we all are very familiar when it comes to memory loss, any other kind of aphasia. So for example, I would always forget to water my plants, and I kill my plants. I still do. But one way that I tried to remember is to call every Wednesday. Every Wednesday, so I call it Water Wednesdays. Awesome, right? Yes. The thing is that I put that in my agenda to Water Wednesdays, and then when I saw that, I couldn't remember why I wrote that, and I actually had an anxiety attack because I didn't know why. And then, of course, this is something Janet and I know the Brain Tumour Foundation did a lovely, so we're all going to talk about it, and that is the word benign. Yeah, you know what? I did have a benign brain tumor, but you know what? It wasn't gentle. It wasn't kindly. And yeah, it was definitely harmful. So that's something we're going to look at, and I know that's something that we're going to talk about in the future. Before I share with you how do I cope, I wanted to ask you, how do you cope? That's what's most important. You got to learn. You have to relearn yourself again. Once you know how you cope, it might help. For me personally, support group, I feel too much of how that person is feeling, that it upsets me, versus if somebody were me one-to-one, I think I would be able to handle it more. So anyway, yes, I did. I wrote a book called Day by Day, and that just talks about my journey to okay, so my sense of humor, that is probably the #1 thing that has got me through everything. So I came up with a joke. What do you call 50 kinky horses with brain tumors? 50 Shades of Grey. Get it? Okay. So I also do artwork. I just love drawing and that kind of thing. And this here is done with like a watercolor pencil crayon, and a friend of mine worked at a bar, so he gave me the plastic things that go on, like liquor bottles, and then they're small. So that's how I do it. Another thing, so like Janique said, unfortunately they don't do the conference anymore, but one thing that I absolutely love to do, I did this for a couple of years, and that is Day by Day's Hats for Hope. So I collected handmade knit, crochet, and fabric hats, and I was able to give them out to you lovely people. So awesome. This was Canada-wide. It just hundreds and hundreds of people who did this. I actually, we ended up collecting about 1,500 hats in 2 years. Very cool. The way that I get around is by, I can't drive, so I have this 3-wheel bike. So awesome. I'm so grateful for this. This definitely helps me. It also helps me in the sense where there's a horn there, so I can honk that, and I can definitely embarrass whoever is working or whatever. I can honk outside of their work. Another thing that I'm just absolutely beaming about, something I've been getting into more so, is public speaking. So here's a picture of me, I don't know, 5 years ago. Speaking at the Activity Professionals of Ontario. I was the keynote speaker. This was my passion, of working in long-term care for seniors. And although I was unable to continue working, this was still a way that I could give back and do what I wanted to do. Toastmasters is public speaking that I'm involved with. Tips. I would like to, in conclusion, I'd like to leave you with a few tips here for you to take note of. One is to get to know and accept the new you. This was very difficult for me. It took me a few years for this one. Yeah, getting to know the new me, getting to know the new normal is that there is no normal. Is that I was very self-aware beforehand, and now not so much. So if I get any inkling of a pain or bruise or anything like that, symptom, my mind goes wild, and I don't know. And then when it comes to accept the new you, you really got to embrace yourself. I'm talking to all of you, everyone. You got to accept the new you of who you are and just make the best of it. You are your best advocate and worst enemy. This is very true. When it comes to the best advocate, the only one more powerful for your best advocate would actually be mama bear. If you have like an angry, a mother who's angry at like a doctor or healthcare provider, she's your lady. Worst enemy, of course, I deal with this every day. And I think a lot of us do, and that is thoughts that get in my head. Like if I'm lying down right before bed and I'm thinking, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? What that? Yeah. So just remember that you are your best advocate and you are your worst enemy. Something that I have learned at a young age, and that is don't wait for opportunity. You need to create one. That has been key for me. Sure, you're going to have, when you work hard and that kind of thing, you're going to have opportunities presented to you. Like for me to speak I'm just completely thrilled to speak here at this for this webinar for the Brain Tumour Foundation of Canada. In the same sense, if there's something that you want to do very badly, if you want to get involved with something, whatever, go get it. Go get it. You got to be shameless. You know, you're gonna get no's and all that kind of thing. You just got to persevere and continue on. Finally, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you so much to Jenik and rest of the Brain Tumour Foundation of Canada team, everybody who's listening, all my fellow speakers. Thank you so much to everybody for listening. And you know what, after all of these years, I have to say that I really did win the lottery. After everything that has happened, just you gotta yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa. Oh my goodness, that was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. And I really liked that confused punishment slide that you had. I think it was a really great visual to show people. And thank you for mentioning the word benign. And I'll touch on that right now, actually. So what Melissa was referring to is really here at Brain Tumour Foundation of Canada is that we're really trying to encourage people within our community as well as healthcare professionals across the country to not use the term benign when somebody's diagnosed with a low-grade or a non-malignant brain tumor, because we feel there's nothing benign about having a mass in your control center, right? So for those of you who are on the line, we'll encourage you to do the same thing for yourselves, or if you hear a healthcare professional mention the word benign brain tumor, maybe have a little conversation with them and encourage them to maybe shift their terminology. All right, so Melissa, I'm gonna switch. So I'm just gonna ask the audience to please be patient with us as we switch from presenter to presenter. I'm now gonna switch over to Marie, who is in Calgary with us. So give me 1 second, and thank you again, Melissa.
Thank you.
All right, Marie, I've got some audio going for us here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Can you, you're sharing your slide. Okay, there it is. Perfect.
You can see it? Okay.
I can see it. Awesome. So we have here with us is Marie from Calgary. And Marie was a primary caregiver to her mother who died of an oligodendroglioma in 2016. And Marie's going to share her experiences with us as a caregiver. So the mic is all yours, so to speak.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Melissa, for that first presentation. That was really well done and really interesting to hear your experience. Like Jenik said, my name is Marie. I am here in Calgary, and I'm going to talk about the story of my mom's experience from her diagnosis and how that affected my life and my family's life. So we actually had a 20-year journey. So it started back in 1995, which that picture there is a picture of my family in 95 in our Canadian tuxedos. So I think that captures the 90s perfectly. So my mom was diagnosed with an oligodendroglioma brain tumor. I was 3 years old at the time and had my 2 older sisters as well. It was obviously a pretty scary diagnosis for my parents, and my mom was actually told that at the time she wouldn't live to see myself and my sisters graduate. But she was determined to make it, and she ended up having an 8-hour conscious craniotomy where they mapped out her brain while She was awake and removed the tumor. And luckily, she recovered completely with very little cognitive effects after that, which we were very fortunate for. And then in 2007, which was 12 years later, we started to notice some big cognitive changes and behavioral changes. With my mom, she was apathetic, extremely fatigued, just generally not herself. Things happened very quickly, and we found ourselves facing a higher grade tumor and an emergency surgery, followed by radiation and chemo. So at this time, my sisters and I were in our late teens, early 20s. I was in high school. My one sister was in university. And so our experience was much different as we entered new caregiving roles. My oldest sister moved home to help us out driving my mom to her appointments because she couldn't drive, and also getting me to and from school. And my other sister had to take quite a bit of time off of work to help us out as well. We banded together as a family to help our mom and dad, but it definitely came with strains of facing adult experiences when we were barely adults ourselves, which we didn't really realize till later. So we had several good years after that, with just some minor cognitive changes in my mom, but overall she was very healthy. Unfortunately, again in 2014, the tumor reared its ugly head again, and surgery and chemo were resumed. At this time, the effects of the 3 surgeries and a growing tumor were really starting to take over who our mom was. Her personality changed. She became impulsive, inappropriate at times, and confused. And as hard as it is now to say those words to describe our mom, who was so loving and caring and kind for so long, it was a lot harder when sitting in a doctor's office and being asked how everything was going. So we definitely suffered in silence in many ways, which I think a lot of caregivers can relate to. I think it's often said that when it comes to brain tumors, sometimes you lose the person before you lose their physical body. And I know we started grieving the loss of our mom before she passed away, which was a very confusing and trying time for all of us. So in 2015, another surgery was performed, and I have to include these pictures here. So this was the same week. The one picture on the left is myself after I got my wisdom teeth taken out, and on the right is my mom after her 4th brain surgery. So we make fun of this photo in our family quite often because my mom was clearly more of a champ getting her craniotomy than I was getting simply my wisdom teeth pulled. So we always laugh at that picture. Unfortunately, in December, we were told that there was nothing more that could be done. And so all treatment was stopped, and my mom was in palliative care. On New Year's Day of 2016, after we had our final but very difficult Christmas together, we moved into a hospice. My mom couldn't talk, walk, she could barely eat, so we knew that we needed some extra help, even though we tried for as long as we could taking care of her ourselves in our home. But at the hospice, we had a really great experience. We got to spend every minute there. We all took leaves from our jobs. We had family meals together. We alternated staying the night on the pull-out couch, and we really just soaked up every minute we had as a family together. We were only there for 2 weeks, and then my mom passed away. And challenges afterwards. 20 years of living with someone with a brain tumor, that was our life. So we couldn't go back to a life before because it was completely changed. So we had all this energy that we had put towards caring for our mom just sitting there, and we weren't really sure what to do with it. That was when I started to get involved with the Brain Tumour Foundation. So I now work with Brainwave and am a healthcare ambassador here at the Tom Baker Cancer Center for the foundation. And I've put my energy into that because I found that continuing to stay a part of the brain tumor community has felt oddly comforting and very familiar to me. And I think that's just because I grew up that being a really big part of my life for so long. So from my experience, I think being a young adult caregiver really gave me a unique experience as well as my sisters. We were fortunate that our dad allowed us to be involved in our mother's care as much as he did, but it did come with some unique challenges. Many of our peers weren't involved in caring for a parent that was ill, and they couldn't really relate. And we were fortunate to have each other, but we also understand that not all young adults have either close family or close friends that can relate to. So we started a support group here in Alberta called Elevate Support Group, and it's for young adult caregivers. And it gives them a space to connect with other people who are going through these similar struggles. It allows them to know of some resources that are available because they're often in a financial strain and they are going through making big life choices in a very difficult time. So some tips that I kind of put together, just a little overview of them for caregivers and also healthcare providers as well, because I find that I use a lot of the things that I learned in my practice here. I work in radiation therapy at the Tom Baker Cancer Center, so I still see a lot of patients and families on a day-to-day basis. So for caregivers, I think it's really important to know or to access all the resources that are available. And even if you feel like you may not need them at the time, to keep them in your back pocket because you never know when you will. Our family didn't really reach out to any resources until afterwards, and we were very lucky that along the way we had been given some information about the Brain Tumour Foundation and other programs that were out there, so that when we weren't going to the hospital anymore, we still had somewhere to reach out for some help. Definitely advocate for yourself. So like I said, it's really a difficult time when the patient or your family member is saying that, oh, I'm good, there's no changes, everything's fine, because they often don't see those personality changes or those behavioral changes. But inside you're thinking, so much has changed, this person is not who they once were, and it is a very confusing and difficult time. And the third one is keep the family. So my family, we really bonded and came together to work through it, and it really has made a big difference. So I know not everybody has the gift of that, but if you do really lean on each other, and nobody understands your situation more than the other people who are in it. So I really advocate for that. And on the flip side, for healthcare professionals, offer those resources at any stage of the cancer journey, because you may think that a patient or a family or patient has already been given those resources prior, but we were in the system for 20 years and we weren't given information at every point either. So there are some gaps that way. And also don't underestimate the involvement of other family members. So I know that often the children of a family are often overlooked and they're not really seen as being primary caregivers, but a lot of the time it is a family approach, and you really need to give those other family members an opportunity to be involved in the care and provide them resources as well, other than just the spouse. And then my final tip is kind of best shown in a picture. So the picture on the left is the picture of my family, and these pictures were actually taken also within the same week. This was one of our last family photos. This was in June, and my mom passed away the following January. And when you look at the photo, it looks just like a healthy, smiling, laughing family, which a lot of the time that's exactly what we were doing, was laughing and smiling. But then if you look at the picture on the right, that's a picture of what was going on inside my mom's brain. So you can see the hole from where the tumor was removed and the disease that's still there. And I think that that really represents the point that you may not know what's going on underneath it all. So whether you come in contact with a friend or a coworker that's going through something, and it may look like everything is perfect and going really well, or underneath it all, and that goes with that. If you really look and see if there's something that could be useful for them or help the family out. And that's all I have for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Marie. You actually were cutting out a little bit in the last minute or so. Could you maybe just, if you remember what you just said, just
oh, yeah.
a few points, that'd be great.
Okay, yeah, just the last couple points, I guess I'll start just from the pictures, just showing that there might be more underneath the surface. So for caregivers to reach out and say when they need help, because it might not be obvious that they need it, or for people who come in contact with patients or families that are going through it, taking that extra time to really look beneath the surface, because there might be more going on and people might be struggling in silence, and that extra time to ask those questions can really make a difference.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, sometimes with the internet, it cuts us in and out a little bit with the sound, so that was.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us, and I'm really glad that you and your family had the opportunity to get your mother into hospice, because hospice really allows us to be a family again, right? Not having to worry about all the medical stuff and that sort of thing. There are a couple of questions that are popping up for you, but in the basis of time, we'll move ahead to the third presenter, and I'll email you the questions and connect you with the people who are asking those questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, that would be great.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marie. And is it snowing there yet in Calgary? Because it started.
Oh, yeah. Yep, it looks like Christmas.
Oh, it's not that bad here, but okay. Awesome. So thanks again, Marie. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course, anytime. All right, James, you're up next, or Jamie, you're up next. I keep calling him James, but he prefers Jamie. Sorry, Jamie. I'm gonna switch you over to be presenter. Although, hold on here. Jamie, I'm going to unmute you. Jamie, can you hear me?
I'm sorry?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome. Okay, so just to let everybody know, Jamie doesn't have any slides, so I'm just going to put up a picture of our website up for now while you chat. How about that?
Okay.
All right.
So I can, off I go?
Off you go. You got 15 minutes. You're on. Oh, sorry. Let me introduce you.
Okay.
Sorry, Jamie. Let me introduce you officially. Jamie is actually signed on from Peterborough, Ontario, and he was diagnosed with a pineal tumor in 2011. There you go. It's all yours now, Jamie.
Okay, off I go. First of all, to the two ladies before me, wow, what great presentations. I will try to live up to the expectations that have been put in front of me here. So just to kind of back up from the beginning, I was diagnosed with a pineal gland tumor in 2000, and gosh, I've already forgotten. But the reason I found out about I had been diagnosed with kidney cancer in 22. So there was one day I was out walking my dog, got a really bad headache, wasn't a headache sufferer to begin with, and because of me having cancer before, I didn't ignore the signs. I went immediately to my closest emergency room, and I was diagnosed after what was to be many MRIs and many CAT scans with a pineal gland tumor. Immediately, my doctor, my general practitioner, had me go from Peterborough to Toronto to have the situation taken up by Sunnybrook, who I can't speak enough about, of their care and how they took care of me, because of course I was petrified of the situation that I was walking into again 6 years after having cancer. So the whole intake process was fairly quick. I met with a surgeon who showed me what was going on, and immediately I went into surgery. My surgery consisted of 3 surgeries in 3.5 weeks because the doctors were not prepared for how much pressure was in my head. So after going through that process, you know, I'd have one, they'd have to do me up again because they needed to get a sample to find out if it was cancer or not. Luckily, it wasn't cancerous, but it was still causing problems. That then equaled checkups and follow-throughs, and lucky for me at the time, to Toronto every day to check up on me and to be my advocate. I have probably one of the toughest mothers in the world. So I feel very lucky and very fortunate to have that kind of gift given to me. From there, I had to do 6 weeks of radiation because it started to grow on me again. And they did not want to remove this type of tumor because of where it is in the closer to the back of your head. It can take away your short-term memory. So you know, you'd walk out of a room, you wouldn't remember to turn the light off, or you wouldn't remember to wash your hands, or stuff, you know, little things like that your short-term memory helps with. So after I did my 6 weeks of radiation, they ended up discharging me and going for checkups. And I can't stress to you how critical checkups are, because it just gives them another map or another platform to ensure that there's no problem, there's no issues, there's no problems that kind of creep up, because like the first lady said, and I apologize, I've forgotten your name, it's those little things that you're like, oh gosh, what's happening now? Or the little pains that come up in your head. And, you know, I had a lot of dark moments because I did not like the look of myself when I looked in a mirror. I had 20 staples down my skull. I kept saying I looked like a cyborg, but that was my process in being able to deal with it. Unfortunately, before this happened, I guess because of the cancer, I wasn't the most happiest person in the world. But through great doctors, through great situations, I was able to know the signs and be able to talk to people when I did have that problems. So this past January, I had my 4th brain operation because it actually had come from the radiation where when the lasers were shot through my head about 6 times to get the tumor to stop growing, on the outside of my brain, it caused, I don't even know what you would call it, but it caused what is called cavernomas to form, which are basically blood cells that the laser has melded together, and they can take on blood and then burst and cause stroke and seizures and all sorts of problems. So I've been very closely monitored for that, and I have to go back every 6 months to Sunnybrook from Peterborough to have another CAT scan, to have another MRI rather, with the dye to see what those are doing, and then I have to go back once a year. So once a year for the brain tumor, sorry. So with that being said, you know, I have been diagnosed with clinical depression, as probably can be assumed, and I deal with that on a day in and day out basis because of all the pain I have in my head and the situations that I go through when it comes to doctors and what I have to do to get through it. But luckily, I have a very supportive family. I have, like I mentioned, a very tough as nails mother who just pushes me and pushes me and pushes me. And I'm very lucky, who's actually laying right next to me right now. I have a wonderful dog named Buddy, who is, I can't stress enough how important pets are in people's lives. And he has made a huge difference in mine by just being able to put him on my lap and pat him and have sleeps with him and all that other stuff, and even just throw the ball for him. Yeah, beyond that, that's been pretty much my journey for the last 5 years or so. So I'll, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. If not, I'll hand it back over to Yannick.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. We're not going to take any questions right now, but if any questions pop up for you, I will definitely connect you with everybody. We've got a couple more presenters, but that's a lot of back and forth for you, to back and forth to the hospital for those appointments.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you know, my mom was at the time dealing with my father passing on from ALS and you know, my situations and everything else. So yeah, it's been a difficult 12 years.
Yeah, I'm sure. And you know, one thing that we discovered a few years back here at Brain Tumour Foundation, we did a little kind of our own little internal study, so to speak, and we figured out that on average, brain tumor survivor visits their healthcare team 52 times a year. So it's a point. Yeah.
Well, then I consider myself lucky, I guess.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Jamie. I really appreciate you taking time with us today. And next up is going to be Karen. So we'll take a second to get organized here on our end. Okie dokie. There we go. All right, Miss Karen. She's sitting right beside me. Karen actually drove in from Windsor, which is a couple hours outside of London here. And Karen's going to be talking from a caregiver perspective to her daughter, McKenna, who was diagnosed with a pilocytic astrocytoma in 2009. And I'll just kind of get you to roll over here and take over. Right. Sound good?
Yeah. Yeah, we have to move. Okay, hello to everyone out there in webinar world. I always find it awkward speaking to myself on a screen here. Thanks for joining us today to hear our stories. As Yannick said, in 2009, my daughter McKenna, let me see here, I gotta switch. Oh, there we go. In 2009, my daughter McKenna was diagnosed with a pilocytic astrocytoma, and she was 4.5 years old. And looking back now, I realized that she was showing symptoms for about 6 months before she was actually diagnosed. So she would take a bath and tell me that she couldn't put her head back any further when I was washing her hair. And at the time, I thought this was just a stubborn 4-year-old exerting her power. And I wasn't really realizing that a tumor in her cerebellum was restricting her head movements. I remember many occasions when I was speaking to her, she would turn to me and cut me off and tell me that Tupi and Banu, which are a ridiculous cartoon she liked, were jumping on her head. I have to say that this was quite frustrating, and I could beat myself up, which I don't, but I would always get quite irritated that she did this. But I realize now that this was a 4.5-year-old's way of saying that she had a headache. And most people can't remember an isolated incident of their 4-year-old having a behavioral outburst, but McKenna had always been very even-tempered. She never really showed extreme excitement or extreme behavioral problems. And a few weeks before major symptoms started, she had a complete meltdown about a shirt she'd picked out to wear to school. It was so surprising to me that I kept her home, thinking she must be coming down with something. It was on Christmas Eve 2009 that things started to progress very quickly. McKenna fell on the ice at a family and friends skate party, and the next day started to complain of pain in her neck. We shrugged it off to a whiplash-type injury from the fall on the ice the day before. She then started to wake up in the early morning screaming with pain in her neck, followed by throwing up. She started to get lethargic, and she was most comfortable laying down. As Dr. Mom, I decided that this was just the flu. It would stop for a couple of days, so we thought she was getting better, and then it would start up again. After 3 trips to the GP within 10 days, I started to realize that with all this throwing up, no one else in the house was getting sick. I was cleaning up vomit every day, and Makenna's younger brother Blake, who was 2 at the time, he wasn't washing his hands in any way that would keep away germs, yet none of us was getting sick. Another thing I noticed was that Makenna was still hungry after she would throw up, so there was really no major loss of appetite in a way that you would expect. We went to the ER and x-rays showed nothing out of the ordinary, and an appointment was made for an MRI for 10 days later. So this is lesson number 1. Trust your intuition and don't wait for an MRI. When you're in that ER, you demand that one be done immediately. After waiting the 10 days with symptoms cycling in that same way, she'd scream in the morning with pain in her neck, she'd throw up, she'd lay down, feel a little bit better. We then went for the MRI. We were called 5 hours after the MRI by the pediatric oncologist on call at Windsor Regional Hospital. We were told that Makenna had a large brain tumor in her cerebellum, and we needed to get to the hospital as soon as possible. They would have an ambulance waiting to take us to London, because in Windsor Children's Hospital in London is where children with life-threatening illnesses are often directed. I packed a bag with a change of clothes for about 3 days, and here's lesson number 2. Brain tumors will usually require more than a couple of days in hospital, so you need to pack accordingly. Within 36 hours of arriving in London, Makenna underwent her first surgery, which was about 16 hours long. After a post-op MRI, Dr. Ranger, Makenna's amazing neurosurgeon, wanted to go back in because she believed there was residual tumor. 36 hours after her first surgery, Makenna had her second. She was in critical care for 10 days, and we lived at Ronald McDonald House for over a month. Makenna's recovery continued for months, and she returned to school and continued to receive occupational therapy, physiotherapy, and was receiving learning supports for over a year. This was an important part of her ongoing recovery, and it doesn't stop when you leave the hospital. As many of you listening know, a brain tumor diagnosis does not happen in isolation from other life stresses, circumstances, and health issues. As far as we know, Makenna's other health issues are unrelated to the brain tumor, but are key in understanding her story of hope. In 2017, she underwent spinal fusion surgery to correct severe scoliosis. I'll now jump forward to the present day. Makenna is an optimistic, outgoing, and imaginative 14-year-old who's just started high school. She's in a drama program, is a dancer, loves to read, has just started circus school doing aerial skills and acrobatics, and has a special place in her heart for the Brain Tumour Foundation of Canada. There are a few things that I've learned over the years as a mom of a brain tumor survivor. One of the first things my husband and I had to confront was how to tell a 4.5-year-old that she had a brain tumor. There was really nothing that could prepare us for that. What I realized very quickly was that Makenna only needed 2 things: to know that we were working with a group of people who we trusted to help make her feel better, and that we would be with her through it all. 10 years later, I still get a little bit. It's okay, I've got people in the room with me, not like the other webinar people. We kept to these 2 messages, and as she's gotten older and continues to go for MRIs, there's more detail added, but we still stick to the facts. Not the what ifs, like what if it comes back. We're honest and turn to experts when there are questions that we don't know the answers to. This brings me to another key learning. When Makenna started to get older and better understand what had actually happened, that there was a time in her life when we didn't know if she would survive, and as she began to understand why they continue to do the MRIs, we realized that living as a brain tumor survivor can be full of anxiety as well as hope. When Makenna was 11, I connected her with a psychologist who she continues to meet with once a month. I didn't wait until we were in crisis. You'll find the best fit for you or your family if you put these supports in place when you're in the best frame of mind. I know this isn't always possible, but if it is, I'd highly recommend it. It's important to balance the gratitude of being a survivor with the recognition that there is bound to be fear and anxiety along the way. For many survivors, recovery is a lifelong commitment. From the very beginning, I didn't expect Makenna to have 24 hours of brain surgery and not have there be some impact, especially on her learning. In grade 2, we started to notice Makenna's reading and writing lagging behind her peers. She started to slip farther behind her classmates, not in her ability to learn, but in terms of how she was able to communicate her understanding in a way that met the expectations in a classroom. Here is a sample of her writing now. It's at about a grade 1 level. Makenna has found a way to deal with this through humor, and she calls it Makenna-ease. But this was often a frustrating situation for her, and it still can be. She can come up with great ideas and know what she wants to say, but when she goes to write it, it doesn't matter how simple the word, she can't spell, and sometimes she can't even read what she's written. It's important to be on top of the supports that children can have in school from the beginning. Anticipate that they will be needed and use the services that are available through the hospital and the school. In the schools, this can often be very frustrating and a bit of a time commitment to push for what is needed, but it really is necessary. An important first step is to assess neuropsychological assessments, to access them through the hospital at key points in the child's development. Makenna continues to have these to track her development and skills. This information was key in helping her set up a school program and learning environment that helps her to be successful. The information allowed her school team to work with us to develop an individualized education plan, which ensures her access to accommodations and educational supports. These can take many shapes and forms depending on the child, but for Makenna, an important one was that it would allow her and encouraged her to use her computer for any written work. She uses voice to text and Grammarly, which is a software tool that helps her write. And with these supports in place, she is able to be at academic level English, which will allow her to accomplish her future goal of going to university. And my final tip, like the ones of the others speakers today, are to use the resources available from the Brain Tumour Foundation of Canada. They've been here for our family since the day Makenna was diagnosed. Our needs and relationship have changed over the years, but we find the resources and staff invaluable. My husband used the pediatric handbook from day 1. I have to admit, I didn't even open it, but he read it from front to back and referred to it constantly. He liked the facts, he liked to see what was going to be expected, and it helped us to clarify information that we may not have heard correctly and ask questions of our doctors that were informed. Our doctor used it, and it set us up to use the book in a meaningful and helpful way. We have received so much comfort and enjoyment from the Brainwave program that brings children with brain tumors and their families together for fun activities throughout the year. And the local and virtual support groups have been wonderful resources for so many people, and it serves as an ongoing way to connect with people who can really understand what you're going through. And we always look forward to the Windsor Brain Tumour Walk every June. It allows us to connect with other families who've been impacted by a brain tumor diagnosis. We put in a team, we fundraise, and we raise awareness. Makenna has a mission to rid the world of brain tumors, and this event allows us to work together towards that goal. I actually changed my career path after Makenna was diagnosed. I now work with cancer researchers in Windsor, Ontario, and there's a saying that they use that I've adopted. Without research, hope is just a word. It can often feel like there isn't much research going on, and there isn't much hope in the brain tumor world. But now that I'm connected to this world, I see the daily efforts of scientists, doctors, students, and healthcare providers in Windsor, in Canada, and internationally. There's so much going on in brain tumor research, and this will lead to better diagnostics, better treatments, and better outcomes in the future. My daughter has already benefited from those. My hope for you today is that you know you're not alone, and that there's a brain tumor community around you that really cares.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Jeanette.
We're switching seats. We're switching seats. Give us a moment, everyone. That was really well said, Karen. And I want to mention, thank you for mentioning the handbooks as well, because what I will say while we're switching presenters, is that we have our various handbooks. We have our adult handbook, we have our pediatric handbook, and we have a handbook for people who've been diagnosed with non-malignant brain tumors. So for those of you who are newer to Brain Tumour Foundation of Canada or to the brain tumor world, and maybe it's your first time signing on to the webinar here, all of these resources are free and can be ordered online as hard copies or electronic resources. And actually Karen, who you just heard speak, is actually helped us, was on the committee for the non-malignant handbook to help us launch that many years ago. And just a little sneak peek, because it's not officially launched yet, but we have our Brain Tumour Caregiver Handbook that we're going to be launching in the next couple of months. One's not ready to order yet, but we are in the process of translating it. And for those of you who are caregivers out there, you're really going to enjoy this book because there's a lot of really great tips and suggestions from other caregivers. This will also be available electronically, and all of our handbooks are also available en français, in French. Okay, so give me one moment to get myself organized here for our next presenter. You're going to see all my files here. It's a little bit embarrassing. 1 second, please. I just realized your video is closed off. Jen. Here we go. All right. Okay, before we get started, this is our last presenter of the day. Her name is Jen, and Jen has come in from Mississauga. Yeah, Mississauga, not too far from London. And she was diagnosed with a meningioma in 2011 and is going to talk to you about her experiences.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jen. So hard to follow up everybody else's amazing stories, but I'm going to start with mine. There's going to be a video playing as I'm speaking. It's just some random pictures of my life throughout my brain tumor surgery, and I just wanted to kind of show a bit of who I am. So, as Janik said, I was diagnosed in 2011. The diagnosis was a complete surprise. I had had a headache for, actually it was a few weeks, but I kind of just, well, I didn't kind of, I ignored it and continued doing what I do, going to work and, you know, just doing everything I usually did in life. And one day the headache felt worse and I said, you know what, I should really get this checked out. So I was actually really early for work one day and I decided, oh, I have some time. I'm going to go to the ER because it was so early, no doctor's offices were open. I went to the ER with the mindset that if it was really busy, that I would just go to work. And for some reason, the ER was like a ghost town. There was hardly anybody in there. I saw an ER doctor within about 20 minutes, which is crazy for ER, especially in Mississauga. So the ER doctor asked me some health history questions, asked me if I had any history of headaches. Like at this point, I really thought that my headache was from the rain, believe it or not. It had been raining steady for a couple of weeks, and I thought, okay, it's the barometric pressure or something. Boy, was I wrong. Thankfully, this ER doctor ordered a CT scan, seeing as I had no history of headaches. And lo and behold, the CT scan showed that I had a mass in my brain. Strange enough, you know, when I was told, the first thing I said to the ER doctor and the nurse that was there is, I actually asked a question and I asked if I could see it. I wanted to see what this thing was in my head. So they did take me out and showed me the tumor and I'm like, okay. And we went back into the room and they started telling me that I would need a referral. They had to refer me to a neurosurgeon. They were actually quite surprised that I was walking around functioning with only a headache, because from the size and location of the tumor, I should have been having a lot of other issues, including hearing issues, vision issues, balance issues. And one of the biggest things they were surprised I was not experiencing was seizures. I had had none. I'm going to knock on some wood here. And to this day, thankfully, I have not had one. So I got a referral to a neurosurgeon at Sunnybrook. It was 10 days later. Within those 10 days, I did a lot of research. the unfortunate thing about that is, yes, I did learn some things, but I also realized that not everybody has the same tumor. Everything is different. It was a lot of information I didn't know what to do with, very confusing, but I managed to put together about 50 questions in that 10 days that I wanted to ask this neurosurgeon. And when I got there, it was unfortunate that he was actually unable to do my surgery because of the complexity of it. So that was disappointing. I was hoping to get some answers that day. I was then told they were going to refer me to another neurosurgeon that could do such a complicated surgery. I waited 2 months for that appointment to come about, or for the referral to come about, and then I waited another month before I actually met the neurosurgeon. So 3 months of the unknown was very difficult, but I really had no choice but to wait. I did make phone calls to try and get it moved up sooner, but unfortunately my neurosurgeon was away. It's funny, I'm going to tell you guys, I'm sitting here, I made a few pages of notes and I have not looked at them. So with this appointment that I had with the neurosurgeon, he was at St. Michael's. Like I said, I had the 50 questions. He was able to answer my questions. I look back and I think, how the heck did I do that? Because it was almost like an interview. I had my list of questions, and I don't know if it's because I needed to just get through it, but somehow I just fired off these questions, including, you know, what some of the bad things that can happen from this surgery. So he said, you know, I could lose my hearing, I could lose my entire memory, which was absolutely crazy because I remember after that appointment, I went in the car and I took out my phone and I started trying to like punch in at my whole life. It's impossible trying to punch in my likes, dislikes, what my kids like and don't like, my parents' names, like everything. And it was crazy to think that I could lose everything and wake up knowing nothing about my life before. And the fact that I could die from the surgery. That was a rough one. But for some reason, the question that I asked that got me the most emotional was when I asked how long would the surgery be, and he said they were going to have to do it over 2 days. For some reason, that got me emotional because I'm thinking of all the things you do in 2 days. You eat, you go to the washroom, like you do everything, and they're going to be in my head. I'm like, holy crap, this is crazy. And the thing is, I had a choice. The neurosurgeon said there are 2 approaches here, so we can watch and wait. And I'm like, what are we waiting for? Like, all these things should be happening, and I don't want them to start happening. Let's get this out sooner than later. So that is what I decided to do, go ahead with the surgery. So my surgery was 15 hours long. That was to be the first part of the first day. They woke me up, and I was just glad to recognize where I was, and that was the doctor, and that's my mom and dad and my kids. Because again, I could have lost my whole memory. So I'm going to tell you a bit of a funny story. I don't know if you can tell from the pictures, but I have piercings in my face. I have 3 piercings. And I remember before my surgery, the doctor was saying that, that the holes could close from my piercings. So one of the first things that I wanted when I woke up was my piercings back. And I'm in ICU wanting my piercings back in my face. So the ICU nurse got me my piercings, and I dropped one. And we were literally like on the floor with her little flashlight, looking for this piercing. But anyways, so as a result of this surgery, my optic nerve was severed in my right eye. So I am permanently blind in my right eye. I have damage to almost half of my cranial nerves. I have a painful nerve condition called trigeminal neuralgia, where it feels like you're getting stabbed in the eye, electric shock like feeling, and burning. It is pretty painful. It is not fun at all. I did not have it before the surgery, so it was another complication from the surgery. I got discharged from the hospital, went home. I was started experiencing some pain in my side, which I didn't chalk up to anything. It went on for a few days, and then I finally decided to get that checked out at my local hospital. And after some testing, they found that I had multiple blood clots in both of my lungs. My local hospital was not able to treat me there, having no neurosurgery or anything there to treat me in case I did start bleeding in my brain. After they gave me the blood thinners, I was rushed back to the hospital. I had my surgery this is so hard. I have a limited time, but there's just so much to the story. I'm going to really try and pare it down. I'm so sorry. One of the, there's just so much, but one of the main things that I wanted to talk about as well is the following year, after my tumor had some time to heal up, I was having to have 6 weeks of radiation therapy at Sunnybrook Hospital, which is crazy for, my tumor is non-malignant. And over this time, I've just learned that non-malignant, malignant, these tumors should just not be in your brain. They're not supposed to be there. They wreak havoc. Here's me with a non-malignant brain tumor, lost the vision in my right eye, ended up with blood clots from the surgery, have painful nerve condition, chronic headaches, just a whole host of other things that are going on from this tumor. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to actually catch up to my notes here, and it's just not working. So I just have a few tips I wanted to share. Just what I've learned over the years. It's been now 8 years. One of the first things I want to say is to stay positive. I feel like positivity carries you such a long way. I feel like if I wasn't positive, I don't honestly know where I'd be right now. I had the option, I guess, of after finding out my diagnosis, of going home, curling up in a ball in bed and saying, I'm not going to make it. But I chose not to do that. I don't know if to this day if it was a conscious choice or if it just, I have no idea, but I'm so glad. So the next day, I actually went to work. And a lot of people are surprised at that. But I just felt like I just needed to keep going. And I'm still trying to keep going. As hard as it is some days, just try and stay positive. Also, I have Advocate. Just going through my journey, I've realized that you got to speak up for yourself. If you can't do it, hopefully a member of your family can do it. I've found myself many times in a position where if I did not speak up for myself, I honestly don't know if I'd be here today. So I'm so glad I was able to voice my concerns to the healthcare team. And the last one I wanted to speak about is to live, just live. You know, we're given this diagnosis. It's part of our lives now, but I look at it as it's part of my life, but it's not my life. So I still try to, you know, do things that I love, such as like music. I love music. You know, I like watching soccer. So even just the little things, just, you know, go out with a friend. I mean, just things that keep you engaged in life. And for healthcare professionals, one of my biggest things that I've come across that I wish more healthcare professionals would do is to listen. Listen to your patients, listen to their concerns. They know themselves, we know ourselves better than anybody. And the second one, I'm looking at the time here. The second one is a person is your patient. So yes, we have a brain tumor or whatever ailment you're treating them for, but firstly, we are people. We have families. You know, we are someone's son or daughter or mother, father, uncle, aunt. We have lives outside of this brain tumor. I don't even know if I'm making sense right now.
You are.
But sometimes in life and how I go about life is to treat other people as I would want to be treated, or as my parents, as I'd like them to be treated. You know, it's funny. I go around Costco. This has nothing to do with the brain tumor, but I'll go around Costco, and you know, if you're a Costco member, when you go in, you get that sheet of paper of the flyers that all the sales of the week, and I don't know how within seconds of receiving that in your hand, why it's on the floor. Like they're on the floor everywhere. And I pick those pieces of paper up because I think of my mom and dad walking through Costco, and maybe they're going to slip on that piece of paper. So if the doctors and the nurses and social workers and everybody that are dealing with people with brain tumors or anything, just think of, you know, think of them as if they're a member of your family and how you would like that person to be treated. And I think that can help everyone, actually. Okay, I'm done. Hopefully within the
You
time.
were great. That was great, Jen. Thank you. And what a great message of hope as well. Watch your step there. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us, Jen. I know it's hard to not only do a webinar, but it's also hard to you know, to keep it within a time limit. So we do appreciate that. We want to thank everybody for being online with us today. As soon as I close off the webinar, a survey is going to pop up for everybody. So we really appreciate it if you could just take like literally 2 minutes of your time to give us feedback on today's survey and on today's webinar, I should say. And as I mentioned earlier, if some of you maybe didn't hear it, we are going to be doing a 12-month webinar series in 2020. So we've been taking your suggestions from this year, from the past surveys around topics. So we will be launching that as of January. As I mentioned earlier, the caregiver resource will be available within the next month or two to order. So we will make sure everybody knows about that as well. So I'm just going to double check my questions here. No, we're good. I'll follow up with all the presenters if there's any questions or comments that came up for you. Once again, a big thank you to everybody, to Melissa, to Marie, to Jamie, to Karen, to Jen, for taking time out of your schedules and to be here with us today and to share your experiences. So thank you, everybody, and thank you to everybody who signed on as well. All the best.